Yo, Shortbox Nation, hello again. Welcome back, and thanks for pressing play today. If you're brand new, welcome to the show. My name is Bodder, and this is the Shortbox Podcast, the comic book talk show that brings you the best conversations about your favorite comics with the people that put their blood, sweat, and tears into making them. This is episode 472, and today I'm covering today I'm talking about one of my favorite apps to read comics on. I'm talking about Hoopla, the digital service that has thousands of digital comics, manga, and graphic novels from just about every publisher you can think of. Marvel, DC, Image, Boom Studios, name a publisher, and chances are they're probably on Hoopla. Now, unless you've been listening to the podcast on mute these last couple of years, you know I ride for Hoopla. Hell, it was a shared topic of interest just a few episodes back when I talked with Kyle Starks. Even Kyle Starks, a comic creator, a successful, comic creator, champions Hoopla. The best part about Hoopla is that it's a platform most public libraries give you free access to as long as you have a library card. But I will admit, as much as I talk about Hoopla and supporting your local libraries, I actually don't know much about how Hoopla is run or operated or how the comics end up on the app. So to help me learn more, today I'm talking with the Vice President of Digital Acquisitions at Hoopla Digital. Her name is Catherine Zappa. She's on the podcast today to answer all my questions about Hoopla's comic book and graphic novel offerings. She's got some info on comic book streaming trends, and we'll learn a little more about the company's mission to evolve the public library. But before we get started, I want to dedicate this episode to all of the Shortbox Patronies, aka the loyal supporters that make up the Shortbox Patreon community. I couldn't do the show without them, so I gotta say, I love my patrons. I'm gonna give all of them a shout out by name at the end of the episode. And if you're not already a member of the Patreon, well, guess what? You too can join the ranks of the Shortbox Elite by signing up at patreon.com/theshortbox. You might be asking yourself, well, what do I get in return for signing up? Well, patrons of the show get access to commercial-free episodes, extra bonus shows like me and Drew's spin-off podcast, Save It for the Podcast. And depending on the tier you sign up for, I'll also send you some free comics and Shortbox merch directly to you. Joining the Patreon and supporting the show costs you like $5 a month, which is like the price of one single Marvel comic, if that. I went to the shop the other day, bought the new Batman #1. It was $10. So for half of that, you could be supporting your favorite comic book podcast. It's not a big amount for you, but it would mean the world to me. So once again, support the show, get rewarded, and have my undying gratitude, and get a shout out every episode by signing up at patreon.com/theshortbox. And without further ado, Shortbox Nation, let's welcome Catherine Zappa to the show. Hey, Catherine, how are you doing? You weren't expecting the applause, were you?
Great, doing great. Thank you so much for having me today. This is awesome. Big fans of the show.
No, that means a lot. Catherine, look, there is only a few reasons why I would fire up the podcast or the equipment and get the studio set up on a Friday. Usually by Fridays, I am mentally done, from the day job, from the editing, and just life in general. Normally Fridays are my day to unwind, but for you to talk Hoopla, the great word about Hoopla, I said, let's do it. So thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me today, Vader. I'm really excited to be here. This is great.
All right, Catherine, let me start off with maybe a silly question, or at least a basic. What does a VP of digital acquisitions do? What do you do exactly?
Yeah, so here at Hoopla, I actually oversee not only comics, but also video and music for any new partnerships that come into the Hoopla catalog with their content. So we are out there. I'm vetting new opportunities, talking to potential new partners, and working with all the account managers that we have over here at Hoopla that work directly with our publishers on a day-to-day basis to make sure that their businesses are growing, that they're getting the visibility that they need via the marketing team. So we also work very closely with the marketing team as well over here to make sure that all that visibility is happening for that new content, not only the new content that's coming in, but some of that awesome backlog content that we've had. Because let's face it, a lot of folks want to reread comics. Digital is a great way to redo that if you don't have them physically at your home. And so that's a great opportunity that we offer through the platform. Get that whole series, get all those volumes, get some great weekend reading in. Like we'll be doing this weekend, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I got a whole backlog. And on that topic, I will say, I find that the selection and just like overall ability to rent a plethora of like digital comics and graphic novels and books, like to be extremely helpful for me as a podcaster, especially when I'm having to do like research for a different guest or topic. It's like realistically, I can't afford to like go buy all this stuff. And I think that's where Hoopla comes in to circumvent some like the things I need to read to prepare for an interview and things like that. You mentioned like you were, you're in charge of handling those relationships with publishers and vendors. I guess could you speak a little bit more about like what publishers you work with? Like, what's that pipeline look like? Like, how do Marvel comics end up on the app?
Yeah, so we work with over 60 different
Wow.
comic publishers directly. And then that's not including, those that we might work with through aggregators or even those that we might work with as far as getting content in from traditional book publishers, right? Like HarperCollins and what they're coming with out through Alley and Scholastic and whatnot. So basically, our day to day is having the conversations about what are we looking forward to, what's coming up next with those publishers, and then thereby the marketing team gets involved to identify what are we going to be able to highlight, what are we going to be able to merchandise around. Our operations team is going to be looking to make sure that we've got that content coming in a timely manner so that way we can get it out to those library patrons that are looking for it day of, especially if they don't happen to be located near a comic book store that
Yeah.
happens to have the physical copies around, or maybe near their own library. I mean, some folks can't get into the library during business hours, and so we're
Mhm.
a great alternative for them as well. And so that's a few ways by which we're working together. The other thing that's really unique about Hoopla, as you've probably noticed, we carry a lot of different formats on the platform, right?
Oh
We
yeah.
carry not only comics, but we've got audiobooks and
Mhm.
ebooks, music albums, and TV shows, as well as feature length videos. So one of the things that we do here, we've got a dedicated operations team for comics. We've got a dedicated marketing team for comics.
Oh
And it's
wow.
like that for all of our formats. It's extremely intentional and extremely strategic because we want to be able to speak to that comic book patron that is
Hmm.
either coming into the virtual library or going into their physical library. When they come into Hoopla, we want them to know that we're speaking directly to them. Likewise, another thing that we do, and I feel like this is becoming more and more prevalent. In the comics sphere, we're used to fandom, right? I mean, that's what the cons are all about. It's what the expos are all about. It's about the fans getting out there. It's about the
Yeah.
cosplay. It's about getting so excited about, all the different characters, franchises, universes, if you will. And so one of the things that our teams do on this side is there's a lot of cross collaborations. That way, when you do go into Hoopla, let's say that you're looking for the Walking Dead comics, right? You'll find those, but you'll also find some Daryl Dixon if you
Hmm.
want to check out the latest on the video side. So one of the things that our team, particularly our marketing team, works really hard to do is say, if you came in and you were just listening to, let's say, the soundtracks for some of the Walking Dead, you can easily find the videos, but you can also easily find those comics. So we're sort of trying to cross pollinate to get that fandom growth that we like to talk about, to bring you into the universe from a really immersive perspective of any format you're interested in at the end of the day. And so that's kind of one of the things that makes us really special, because most platforms out there aren't carrying multiple formats like we are, especially in the comic book space, right?
Yeah.
Not many DSPs are doing that, but we're doing that. So if you have a thirst for a particular universe, we are absolutely going after trying to feed that thirst, whether, to your point, it's Marvel or DC or any other comic franchises out there.
Now, Catherine, I logged into Hoopla today, and I, for the most part, am using Hoopla on my iPad. I'm a nighttime reader; like that's my way of unwinding, and I'm always reading at night. But today, I was on the desktop, the website version, and I went to the comic book section, and I noticed that you guys front and center had a big old banner that read like "Manga is here," and which was news to me. So, how new is that you guys have started adding manga?
So yeah, so manga was a little bit of a lift on our side, right? Because we wanted to bring in a traditional right to left reading experience.
Wow.
And our player had not been built that way. So we actually went in back in 2023, and rebuilt the player. And so as of June of 2023, we started to bring in some manga content slowly but surely. And today, yeah, we've got a really great rounded out collection of manga that is available for engagement. Multiple publishers are on board with us already at this point, and we've got many, many more. Big and smaller size publishers that are excited to get in that space. And that includes Monway too. We're looking to bring in some more Monway
Oh, wow.
content. So yeah, really taking a look at how can we diversify? Because at the end of the day, Botter, we know that there's a very diverse group of individuals that enter the library to get the content that they're looking for, and their needs are diverse, their interests are diverse, and we want to meet those needs and interests. So that's one of the reasons that we wanted to make sure that manga was in there. Wish we could have gotten to doing it sooner, to be honest with you, because obviously there's been a ton of interest there, a lot of growth for a long time. But yeah, we had to do some development on our side, and I think we developed out a pretty great experience. If you're used to engaging with traditional comics with us, or westernized manga, it probably wasn't too much of a lift for you to move over as a patron and engage now in the right to left, because the reader's very, very similar. It's just, we're switching to the other direction than you were used to before. And we do have instructions in there too, if you are a first timer or new to manga digitally.
Yeah. Very interesting. So, I guess, Catherine, I got to ask, because you mentioned, the community aspect of fandom and going to conventions. I have to imagine that you probably get to do some pretty cool traveling yourself. Is that safe to say? Like, are you going to like these big conventions and, representing on behalf of Hoopla and meeting publishers and such?
Absolutely. Every single year you can find us at San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we tend to go to New York Comic Con every other year. We also go to the anime expos too, because of that growth that we've been seeing in the manga space. So yeah, Anime NYC, LA Expo. We've been at all of those, and we're continuing to make an appearance there again to meet with partners in those spaces where we can try to bring in more and more content. Meeting with those publishers, talking about what's going to be new if they've been active partners of ours.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Are you guys going to be at New York Comic Con this year?
So this year, New York Comic Con falls very close to Frankfurt Book Fair, which is the biggest book fair in the world. And it's been surprising, but that manga and comics at Frankfurt Book Fair has been growing at a pretty exponential rate. So this
Wow.
year, we're going to be heading on over to Frankfurt Book Fair in Germany. Like I said, it's that same general time frame. We got to get over there. So we're going to be there this year instead, and hopefully back at NYCC next year.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, Catherine, how much did you know? I guess I'm curious about your fandom and your personal relationship with comics, because I mean, I imagine in this role you probably have learned quite a bit, from working with manga publishers, manhwa. You're talking about the big American publishers as well. Like, how much of this stuff did you already know, like prior to working at Hoopla?
Yeah, so I've been in content and content distribution for over 20 years. Comics, I've been in comics though it's been about 7 years now that I've been working in the comic space. But of course, my love for comics and content in general, started when I was a lot younger. I can remember going over to my grandparents' house every Sunday, sitting on my grandfather's lap, and he would open up the newspaper, and I would immediately say, just move right to the funnies, right? And that's
Yeah.
kind of where my passion first started. My family actually calls me Kathy, so we would see if there was a new Kathy comic funny in there. We'd look at
Yeah.
Garfield, Zitz, and Blondie. Those are some of my favorites that I grew up on. And honestly, it made me super excited when we went into our deal with Hearst. You might have noticed we've got a binge pass in there called Comics Kingdom. It's all Sunday funnies. That's a deal that we have in place
Oh,
with
I didn't know that.
Hearst. Yeah,
Awesome.
so if you want to be able to really engage with a lot of comics, the binge passes are a great way to go. You can get access to hundreds of titles with one single borrow. Butter, that's one thing we didn't talk about. If any of your listeners or watchers are unfamiliar with Hoopla, it's a borrowing currency. You mentioned before how it's free, so it is at no cost to the patron. The library is making that
Sure.
payment
Yep.
on the patron's behalf, but the library is going to give them a certain number of borrows every month. So
Hmm.
if you get 10 borrows a month, you can go in and yeah, you can check out 10 comics, or maybe you check out, 4 anime episodes and then 6 comics. But with a binge pass, it's great because you can go in and you can borrow a whole collection of content. And that's where that Hearst binge pass comes into play for us. We've got another one too with Fanbase Press, who we just love, Fanbase Press and everything that's coming out of that imprint and publishers area. So got a couple of opportunities there, but that's kind of where my passion first started. And then from there, not to show my age, but I got into, Saturday morning cartoons have been a thing for a very long
Hell
time. They
yeah.
were
Come on.
decades upon decades ago. So, a lot of my interest went back to some of the stuff I saw there. I was watching Captain Caveman, and then all of a sudden was saying, oh my gosh, Captain Caveman and Teen Angels, get out. Hanna-Barbera, you're killing me. And so I was getting excited about that. Speed
That's awesome.
Racer, same situation there, right? Because they were
Hmm.
still playing the original shows from the 60s, late 60s and early 70s, in the late 70s and early 80s when I was growing up. So that's really where it all kind of started for me. And then, of course, on the live action side, you saw live action,
Oh yeah,
networks coming into play with Wonder Woman and the old Batmans from the 60s. So that kind of really ended up getting me jazzed, especially to see strong female figures coming out with, as I mentioned before, the Teen Angels, and then Wonder Woman,
yeah,
really coming in to see, wow, look at all of these empowered women and the stories that they're having, and the meaningful, you know, advancement that they're providing to females. And I got really jazzed about that. I can't
yeah.
lie. From there, obviously a lot of stuff started happening on the adaptation side for film. And
Hmm.
so at that point, I was already familiar with the Star Wars comics and things like that. So that just sort of enhanced my interest too, if you will. And I got really jazzed when I was looking at the Tales of the Jedi. That was a real game changer for me, looking at what Kevin Anderson, particularly Dave Dorman's drawings. Really love Dave Dorman. And so that all started to sort of create a different level of engagement for me, in storytelling and in taking me to, a place that I can't physically be in myself, but from an imagination perspective, how exciting. And I think that that's what really kind of started to move me, right? Like being able to whisk away emotionally into those stories and start to have that, emotional engagement involvement with those characters, that it's just so crazy to think I'm reading this story, I'm looking at these visuals, and I'm feeling so emotionally engaged all
Hmm.
of a sudden with those
Yeah.
characters, and how you would see some of those characters grow over time. So that's kind of where it sort of started for me. It kind of, I guess it went back a lot to that whole fandom thing though, right? Because for me, I've always been a multi-format engager, you could almost say, in stories of that nature. But yeah, it started with the funnies originally for me.
Catherine, that was such a phenomenal response. Like, no notes. You perfectly encapsulated why I love fiction and comics and just like reading overall. It's just the ability to be teleported to a different world. And I think comics, obviously, very biased here, but I think comics is the best medium out there. It's combining pictures and words together for a great experience. Um, Catherine, I was doing some research, and I came across your LinkedIn, and I was very impressed to see like, oh wow, she's like been working in this industry, publishing and content. Like I saw like prior to this role at Hoopla, you had worked at Dreamscape, which I'm familiar for as, the company that produces a lot of like award-winning audiobooks, things like that. I guess what's your favorite thing about working in the publishing market?
In the publishing space, honestly, it's the passion around content in general. I have to imagine that like you, and as I just shared, this is giving folks an opportunity to escape, right? We're creating this awesome opportunity for escapism from the realities. And looking at where we're at here in 2025, the past 5 years have been quite a ride, right? Engagement is up because I think everyone has been looking for some level of escapism, whether it's through comics or some other medium. And I think, I've always been excited to be part of that. Like, I want to be part of helping folks to take a journey that will relieve them of their their real reality stresses, and take them into a different storyline, that'll get them excited and maybe stress them in other ways potentially, right? Especially when you're left with a cliffhanger in the
Yeah,
single
absolutely.
editions. Give me a break. I need that next one to come out soon.
Yeah.
But that's the reality, is it's all about content and the passion behind content. I think that not only I have, but I imagine that everybody that works with content has to have some level of passion to it, because there's still a level of work associated with it if we're working in it, right? But your passion and how much you love those stories is what makes it all worthwhile, and being able to be a part of it, even on the sales side at this point, right? Because I'm on the acquisition and sales side essentially. So I'm not really in a creator position at this point as I was in some of my previous roles. but it's exciting to be able to get out there and say, oh my goodness, the patrons are asking us for this. The library is asking us for this. I can't wait to be able to serve this up. I'm so excited to, meet all the needs that they're looking for today, especially again, if they can't get to their local comic book store, if they can't get to their local libraries, because everybody's got different reasons that they can't
For
in some
sure.
cases.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I recorded another episode with one of my co-hosts, and we were talking about, we got on the topic of like libraries, and we were talking about like, our favorite memories from the library. And growing up, the library was like the place to find me at after school. All throughout middle school, when we didn't have a computer at home. Now I'm dating my age now. Like I was always at the library, and when they started carrying and I don't think they carried a lot of comics then. I can confidently say not. But I was reading choose your own adventure books, Hardy
Yes.
Boys. I was using the library's computer to print out Dragon Ball Z images. Like the library was like a safe space and things like that. And I don't get to go as quite as often now, but I think Hoopla is a good extension of that to like kind of give me that feel and and things like that. And I was thinking about what you said in terms of like the ability, the power of really good storytelling and fiction and cliffhangers. And sometimes I think it made me think about how Hoopla can also be a test of patience, because when you realize that you have hit your total rental and you're like, oh my God, I still have 8 more days left this month before it's renewed, you really start to like realize like exactly what you want to read in the moment.
I'm so happy that you brought that up. It's weird because we didn't talk about this ahead of time, but I am in the same boat as you. Okay, so my library where I live, they only give
Mhm.
me 4 borrows a month. It hurts my soul.
Oh my
I
God.
know. And
How do you decide on anything?
I know. And I've got my husband and I've got 3 kids too, who are all first and foremost, when they use Hoopla, they're using them for comics, by the way. I should mention that. They're
Oh,
huge
hell yeah.
comic fans on Hoopla. Um, but that was their first complaint to me was, I only get 4 borrows a month. What is this? So I'm so excited that we have this favorite button. And a lot of folks I feel like don't know about that. I use my favorite button on there as almost like a future playlist for when my next month
For
comes
sure.
and
Same,
I can
same.
borrow again. So it's a little, if you're not familiar with it, for any of the patrons out there, it's a little heart button that happens to be on there. If you click that, it's going to go into your favorite carousel, which is going to be on your main
Mhm.
page. And then you can go back the following month to remember, oh, that's where I left off. I need to pick up that one.
Yeah.
Or these are the other things that I was looking at around the way, and I just didn't have enough borrows at the end of the day. In addition to that, I mean, that's my go-to. I use that all the time because, again, 4 borrows a month over here. It's not a good thing.
Yeah.
But we've also got bonus borrows. At the end of every single month, there's a week-long program called Bonus Borrows. And that's a really important program to us that is important not only to the libraries and the library patrons, but honestly, it's also really important to the content providers. And they're always super excited to get engaged with it, which always excites us over here. So that's where basically we're able to give additional borrows of any of that selection of content just out at the end of the month. Anybody can engage with those. You can use as many as you want. There's usually about a dozen available in each format, including comics. So there's a whole lot of extra stuff to engage with at the end of every single month of the year that have been hand selected, and the publishers have specifically said we want to make sure this is included in the program. We actually
Hmm.
have conversations with every one of those publishers. So you're going to see some publishers that are pretty consistent in there. They are huge fans of that program. They're huge fans of the library, and they're huge fans of the patrons and getting additional comics on over to the patrons every month that way.
What type of I guess hurdles or road, like what type of opportunities, like hurdles, roadblock, what was the question? I guess what are some of the common, I guess, hurdles or roadblocks when it comes to working with like a publisher to get their content on the platform? Because I think manga and how there are certain authors that are very anti-digital. Like they don't offer any of their work digital. It's strictly a print format. I don't think that's the case with Marvel and DC, but I know that like for Marvel and DC, some of their stories, like they don't have the rights to no longer, so they can't offer something like whatever Conan or certain Star Wars books. I guess what are some of the challenges that come with working with publishers to provide digital comics for the patrons?
Yeah, so most comic publishers that we've been talking to are not opposed to digital. A lot of
Okay.
them are just asking, I think how much, is the juice worth the squeeze there, right? Is there
Hmm.
enough opportunity in digital for us to digitize? We have heard that before. And
Okay.
all that we can say on our platform, and not every platform's the same, it's really hard to find digital comics sometimes. It really can be hard, especially a good experience with digital comics. It's a struggle. But usually one of the first things that I'll do is I'll walk them into our experience. Anybody that has a relationship with us, we've walked that publisher or that partner into the experience to make sure this is how amazing this experience is. I mean, you mentioned my resume before. I came over from HarperCollins. They were some of the first in to start working with Hoopla because the experience is a great experience. And they were seeing that the patrons enjoyed it and were engaging. So we've had a great business with growth year over year since the launch of the platform. And we're seeing some extremely great growth on the comic side of the business. I think that it's such a fresh and easy, intuitive to use platform that at the end of the
Oh yeah.
day, it's not that much of a sell to a publisher typically. Now, to your point, in some cases, those publishers may have certain creators that have withheld their digital rights because they're not comfortable with digital yet. And I think that that's still part of our educational journey with those publishers to be able for them to be able to share back to those creators. And this is the true experience. Check it out. I talk about our action view processing a lot with them too. That's where we have that panel by panel viewing opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a lot of sensitivity around that because they're like, whoa, 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 we don't want you cutting up our book or our files, the single. We
Oh
don't want
wow.
you doing that. We
Yeah.
don't do that. The way that we go about creating that action view, we actually never touch the file. It's really just a zooming in technicality that we are able to do. And then there's an additional pinch and zoom there. From my perspective and from how we typically tell it, we're actually giving a lot of great opportunity to the artwork to get engaged with at a much
Yeah.
more intimate level,
Hmm.
as though somebody was holding it in their hand and they could go in for a closer look at, oh my goodness, look at the contour on that figure, right? Like all of a sudden you're able to do those types of things with that type of functionality, and we have a pretty good functionality there. I would say better than most. And so those are a few of the things that we always try to bring to light, that we are trying to bring that that intimate experience, that as though it were in your hand, even though you aren't holding it. We want the
Hmm.
engagement with the artwork that way. We want you to be able to see exactly how the lettering's been handwritten, and see it and feel the emotion from how it's been written, right? Um, so that way, they can really get that experience, that emotional experience again with the writing, and get that connectivity going, even though it's a digital experience.
To on the topic of that action, what is it technically called in Hoopla?
We call it action view processing,
Action
and
view.
it is actually proprietary. We have our own
Oh, cool.
proprietary software that we developed to work within our player for that experience. So you won't get that same exact experience anywhere else. It might look
Okay.
replicated, but it's not the same.
Good to know. Okay, so
Yeah.
and on the topic of the action view processing, I told you that I typically read at nighttime, well into like the wee hours of the night, and as you can imagine, I've been doing that for many years. So these eyeballs don't work like they used to much anymore. And I can't tell you how many times the action view processing has come in handy when I'm like trying to read like a double page spread and I need to like kind of hone in, or the text is too small. So, I need it blown up a little bit bigger. So, really cool to know that you guys put, some attention to that feature. I think it's a wonderful feature when reading like kind of hard to read book, or, pages, or you want to admire the art, to your point, a little more. Um, I want to talk about the larger company, because this was new to me. I didn't know that Hoopla is the digital arm of the larger company, Midwest Tape. And I'm to understand that Midwest Tape has been around for years, working closely with libraries all over the U.S. I'm sorry, all over the U.S. And I was curious, when did Hoopla, I guess, come about, and what was and what does Midwest Tape do that's different from Hoopla?
Yeah, so Midwest Tape actually came about in the mid 90s, and I love the story. So, um, our founder, co-founder, the company's been founded by John Eldred and Jeff Jankowski. John Eldred owned some family video stores. And Blockbuster came in, bought some of those stores, and he had all these extra tapes and was like, what was I going to do with them? And he remembered that librarians used to come in all the time and sometimes make purchases from him. And so he ended up starting relationships with them. And that's when he decided to start up Midwest Tape. And you would be shocked at how many people have been with the company since the company first got started back in the mid 90s, which is
Wow.
awesome. Hoopla has been around for more than 10 years now. Basically, it was after 2010 that we started developing out what Hoopla would look like. And today, we've got a company of over 400 people between Hoopla and Midwest Tape that are servicing libraries. On the physical side, we still provide DVDs, Blu-rays, and CDs, so mostly focused in the video and music space on the physical side of the business. And then on the digital side of the business, of course, we've expanded and we're in far more formats there for the libraries.
Wow. I mean, like I said, I've had libraries on my mind a lot, especially the Jack's Public Library, where I'm here in Jacksonville. And I'll never forget the first time I went into one of the libraries many years after like not that many years, but after graduating like high school and being in college and having to like, occasionally go to the library to find books. And I'll never forget going to the downtown main library, and they had a whole dedicated section to comics and graphic novels. And it wasn't in the kids section for once. Like I was used to seeing it sometimes in the kids section, but it was like a full blown curated section. And I was like so impressed that like, oh my God, they've got like current books, like books from, last year, the biggest titles here. So I guess I'm curious. The website Hoopla says that you guys carry thousands of books. Is there an exact number about how many comics and graphic novels that are available on Hoopla?
Yeah, so comics and graphic novels and manga on Hoopla is now over 35,000.
Holy
So
moly!
we're really excited about that. Yeah, absolutely. We're really, really excited about that. Across Hoopla, we've got a lot of content. We've got over 2.5 million pieces of content on Hoopla. But comics has been growing at a pretty rapid rate for us, and we're excited to keep that energy going. There's a lot of great publishers we're looking forward to, announcing in the future new relationships with, and of course, a lot of those
Hey,
guys have a lot of content. So we're continuing to see growth in a pretty substantial way year over year. With the amount of patrons that are coming in, again, I think a lot of it goes back to that fandom. I think some of them go in and they're listening or they're watching something else, and then they're like, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize there was the comic book opportunity in here for me to start
mhm.
checking out associated with that franchise of opportunities. So it's pretty cool.
What? Oh, absolutely. And you said something earlier, I think a few times about the advantage of digital comics, and which it's because I feel like it's kind of always a fun argument between like digital fans and print fans. I think I kind of walk the line between both. I love having holding a physical book in my hand. But I also have a small library just in this room alone, and then a storage unit filled with a bunch of comics. So digital is, cross checks a lot of different boxes, but one in particular that you said that I want to highlight is that, I live in a city where I'm fortunate where there is 4 or 5 great comic shops in like a 10-mile radius. That is not the case for a lot of folks that live in, say, like, I think the Midwest is a very good example, like where the nearest comic shop might be 20, 30 miles out. And this is where like the advantage of digital comes in handy where that eliminates the your geographic location is no longer a factor. It's like now you've got a fair shot at building a fandom and finding out great stories too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely part of the opportunity, I think. It's not that everybody doesn't want to go into a comic book store, right? I mean, who wouldn't
Hmm.
love to be able to go into a comic book store every day? They're so cool. You get that vibe as soon as you walk in that you feel like you're at home a little bit, right? But that's just
Hmm.
not the reality for everybody. And so it's really exciting to be able to bring, a really great catalog of content across so many amazing publishers directly into their homes, through their public library still, which is great. I mean, we love that community grassroots type of an opportunity. Um, clubs, things like that that are coming out of public libraries. You can bring your physical or you can use your digital if for some reason you don't have the physical copy to engage. So,
Yeah.
we're really just trying to meet the needs of those that want to be able to engage. Additionally, I would say this, if you're looking for something, sometimes we've got some of those niche comics that can be a little bit harder to find even in comic book stores. So every now and
Hmm.
then, digital may be another reason that,
Absolutely.
you pick up another title.
Absolutely. Yeah. I guess I'm curious to hear what are some of the most popular titles on Hoopla? Is there any trends that you're seeing or any specific titles that you guys notice is like very popular or franchises, etc.?
Well, absolutely. I mean, a lot of times things will go along with what we're seeing happening in the multimedia space, or the
Hey.
the theaters, if you will. So, like, Absolute Superman Volume One is huge right now for us. So is Lois Lane,
Huh.
Absolute Batman. Those are all doing really, really well for us right now. Black Panther is another one that's in the top of our popular carousel right now, along with Lazarus. So there's a lot of different things that are happening. I would say most recently, though, we've been seeing over the course of the past 18 to 24 months a really big growth on the kids side of things.
I was
Um,
just about to, I'm sorry. I was
yes.
just about to ask about like what are you guys noticing trend wise for like YA graphic novels, the teen market? Because it's a conversation I always have here on the show is that like there's like this weird uh like unfair almost like statement debate that you always hear online. Are comics dying? Like is manga eating our lunch? But it's like no. You're not looking at comics holistically, like, especially like when you're looking at something like Dogman or Captain Underpants or any of the many successful YA novels, like they're doing great and they are comics through and through.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is what's happening throughout the school systems, particularly in the US. They're embracing comics, graphic novels, and manga in a way that I know that I didn't see when I was growing up. They're really
Same.
embracing it in
Yeah.
a very different way. I mean, I'm seeing my kids even come home now with their syllabuses for things that they're going to read throughout the year. And, Scholastic has that Survivor series of stories that they now have. They've always had it in prose, but now they've got it in graphic novel as well. And the teachers are accepting that. They're saying with open arms, if that's how you want to engage. I got three boys. That's how all three of them engage.
Yeah.
They engage with graphic novels and comics first, and it's been a real welcome. I think that the school system is accepting to that and seeing really what's coming in. And honestly, from a creative perspective, I love that because it's just bringing them more into that creative art world too, from a
Hmm.
visual perspective. That, when I was going through even art classes, we didn't really cover comic type art, right? Now, all of a
Yeah.
sudden, you're seeing that being brought in from the English language ELA perspective. And I think that that's really exciting too. And yeah, we're definitely seeing anything that Dav comes out with is like hitting it for us in a big way. But you're seeing a lot of stuff too that again was a traditional chapter book like Babysitter's Club
Sure. Yeah. Wow.
moving
Throwback.
on over. Yeah, so you're seeing a lot of stuff that historically maybe had been a typical chapter book now showing up in comic book format, and I think that it's really exciting. I think it's expanding the franchise opportunities to a new audience in a very different way, and I think that's one of the reasons. And then you're always going to have, opportunities like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, right?
Hmm.
It does. I mean, everybody, the demographic for those comics are huge now, and that includes children coming in and checking those out. The big Nates. There's a lot happening on the manga side too. That was an exciting thing for me. I'll be honest. I came home one day. One of my sons had Naruto, and I was like, oh my gosh, I love that you picked this up. I said, how did you even know how to read this though? And he was like, gosh, mom, isn't it obvious? And I just loved the response because it really showed how kids, if they want to read something,
Oh yeah.
they're nimble to it, and they're fluid, they're smart, they're gonna figure it out, and they're gonna engage. And I think that that's exciting, especially from a larger cultural perspective,
Hmm.
that not everything is westernized necessarily out there, and they still love it, they still eat it up, right? It's
Yeah.
exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. And I mean, in short, these kids got it good. Okay, Catherine, because as I'm thinking about just my relationship with libraries, reading in school, I had to fight. I think I've said this story so many times on the show, so the patrons are like, "Oh my god, here he goes again." But I'm gonna say it anyways. when I was in middle school, we had the 25 book challenge. I don't know if that was like a national thing, but in my school, if you read 25 books throughout the year, I think you got like a pizza party or something. And I had to fight to have comic books counted. Now, the stipulation was like every 5 comics or 6 comics counted as one book. And I remember cracking my knuckles in front of this adult, this teacher. I was whatever 12 years old, and I was like, "That's it. Watch this."
Challenge accepted, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like,
You're
oh,
doing
I
it.
do that in my sleep, lady. So let's go. Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that.
Well, for
Catherine,
sure. Yeah.
no, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, that's the thing is when you love to read and you're voracious like that, especially if you're in a franchise universe or a couple franchise universes, you will read it all. And in some cases you may want to read a second, third, fourth time, right? I mean,
Hmm.
that's what's so exciting about it, especially with comics, because you're taking a slightly different look at those visuals every single time you reread. It's almost like when you watch a movie and you're like, I totally missed that joke the first time, right? And then you go in and you're reading that comic again, you're like, wow, I didn't even realize the attitude that character had when they
Yeah,
did
yeah,
that,
that's a good point.
just by
Hmm.
that visual, right? So it's exciting. And I mean, I think too, in the manga space, you've got something like manga classics, right? Totally different way to tell about those classic tales, which can be really onerous when you're looking at those huge books and it's just 1.5 million words, and all of a sudden you get swept right into it in manga
Hmm.
classics and
Hmm.
taken away into a story of Macbeth or something, right? That all of a sudden you can kind of understand along the way. It's not that, you know, old Shakespearean English in the
Yeah.
same style anymore. You're looking at it differently.
For sure. I think sometimes having that visual element gives you a nice point of reference that sometimes like just words alone don't necessarily give. So yeah, good, very good point. Catherine, is there any other, I guess, interesting data points, trends, stats, whatever they may be that you have on deck that you wouldn't mind sharing when it comes to like Hoopla or the trends that you see when it comes to the comics and graphic novels or the
Yeah, I
readership?
mean, one of the things that we're really looking forward to doing at Hoopla is coming out with more binge passes in the comic space, and really providing a larger offering of comics that is meaningful.
Hmm.
We're really intentional when we come out with those products. We don't do them just every night and day with everybody. So we want to make sure that we're really bringing something to the table that we think is going to lend to a really great opportunity for engaging again with a lot of comics that you can select to create that world for yourself that you want to enter creatively, and emotionally as far as storytelling goes. So that's going to be one big thing for us. And the other thing is, I think, seeing where it makes sense for us to strategically get more involved with carrying singles. We do carry singles on the platform right
Oh
now.
yeah, you do. Yep.
It's kind of here or there that we do, but coming in really strategically when we're hearing from patrons that they're looking for that next one. I think Saga is one of our more popular single series right now that we have.
Yeah.
It's just, everybody loves Saga. And we do too. But there's a lot of other opportunities out there like that I think we want to bring to the table. So I think that we may end up seeing some more single opportunities come in, for some of our publishers along the way.
One of my favorite selling points about Hoopla, and it always feels like a dirty little secret. I always feel like dirty mentioning it, but it's the fact that Hoopla, you could read Image Comics day of release. So sometimes when I'm at the shop, whether it be budgetary constraints or I just legit forgot to go pick up, the newest issue of whatever Saga being a great example, or just a new number one. I've noticed like Hoopla has it the same day, and I always feel like I'm like, am I supposed to have access to like this brand new book that came out? And I guess I would love to hear like, I guess why is that the case for Image? I guess is it because that's the agreement you guys have set up with Image? I guess I'm curious why it's not like that with other publishers, but Image specifically is really good at day of releases.
Yeah, yeah, Image is absolutely wonderful at day of releases, and we're so grateful for their partnership and willingness to be able to provide it so quickly. To be fair, not all of the publishers are able to do a
Sure.
day and date release with us. But certainly as soon as we've got access to the content, as soon as it's been delivered and they give us the thumbs up that we're ready to go, we're gonna drop that out to you guys. And of course we've got a great marketing team. We've got Ray Berry and Jada on his team that they're always out there making sure that they're getting visibility of all the great stuff that everybody's been waiting for if it's not day and date. But yeah, day and date, we're always trying to let folks know, sort of back to that point of not everybody can get to the comic book store. It's just not, it's not, and it can be an accessibility issue sometimes,
Sure.
right?
Yep.
And so that's one of the conversations that we have with a lot of our publishers about, how quickly they can deliver to us and allow us to release content. So it is kind of a publisher by publisher thing. If every publisher came to us and said, we are able to give this to you day and date, we would be ready for it.
Oh yeah.
But unfortunately, that's not the reality. And there's several reasons behind that. I think across the publishers, it's not one specific reason. There's a lot of different things that I think go into how quickly we're able to get access.
I'm thinking about a past interview that I had, and we were talking about digital comics, and the point was brought up that the case for a lot of publishers is that they actually don't even have the means of digitizing their comics, or some have like outdated technology, or just not a priority. Do you guys ever step in those cases where it's like, oh yeah, we'd love to offer our content digitally, but if you can figure out how to do it for us, do you guys ever go about doing like that technical aspect too?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we are just a distributor. We don't
Got it.
provide digitizing services at the company. And in some cases, you're absolutely right. That could be one reason why we don't have the titles day and date, because the priority, of course, is going to be, if you're in both the print and the digital space, is going to be making sure that the comic book stores have what they expect to
Sure.
have on their
Yep.
shelves. And so sometimes we end up falling in, second in line there in that case. But yeah, unfortunately, we don't provide those types of services. And in some cases, I do kind of wonder if the publishers would even provide us that type of opportunity. I say that going back to something that we talked about earlier today, which was the digitizing of comics in general and the comfortability factor,
Hmm.
right? That some publishers have and maybe in some cases don't have.
Yeah.
If we take on digitizing, maybe they would be questioning, I need to
Hmm.
see every single one ahead of time, or to make sure that it looks up to our quality standards and things
Sure.
of that
Sure.
nature. So that's one of the reasons that it's definitely in the publisher's hand to feel confident that the files that they're providing to us meets their quality standards as well. And if for some reason it were to ever not meet ours, we would let a publisher know that, and they would uh, regenerate it on over to us and redeliver it to us, because every now and then we'll hit a bug during delivery that during our QC process, and we do QC every single title that comes through, making sure that that file is up to par for what the
Got it.
patrons and the libraries are expecting at the end of the day.
Okay, that makes sense. I've got a follow up question about publishers, but I want to take a quick sidestep. And we've been talking about the patrons, the listeners, and I want to pass the baton to a listener of this show who, admittedly, is the one that put me onto Hoopla. Was one of the earliest champions of Hoopla. Is one of the biggest champions of public libraries. Her name is Amanda Marin. I reached out to her and said, "Hey, you're my library person, my Hoopla person.
I
I've
love
got
that.
Kat Zappa on the show. Do you want to submit a question?" And she went ahead and submitted one. So let's hear from Amanda.
Hi, Potter and Catherine. My name is Mandy, and I'm a longtime Shortbox listener, comic reader, and fan of Hoopla. I've been using Hoopla for over a decade through our local library in Jacksonville, and it's how I read the majority of my comics, listen to many audiobooks, and watch shows that I can't find on any of the other streaming services. That said, as someone who has been a library patron for much longer than I've currently been a librarian, I am now struggling with the thought that so many small libraries and library systems can no longer afford Hoopla, and the effect that will have on their patrons' access, especially to comics and graphic novels. Libby and other apps just don't offer as robust a catalog or smooth layout the way Hoopla does. So my question is, I'm wondering how the company is looking at lowering costs and affirming that continuing access amid all the federal budget cuts that have been occurring, and where so many library systems are looking to cut more and more apps. Thank you.
Hey, big shout outs to Mandy. I forgot to also mention that she is also a librarian at the St. John's Public Library. So big shout outs to Mandy. Thank you for the question, Kat.
Oh, yeah, thank you for that question, Mandy. And I'm so excited that that she's so committed to Hoopla, and that it's become sort of a go-to for her. We absolutely love that. So one of the things, I can say is that we're constantly expanding our offering in hopes of, being able to bring in more content at costs that are affordable. I think that binge pass that I talked about before, where with a single borrow, you're getting access to huge bundles of content that you get, 7 days of unlimited access to everything that might be in there. Um, you know, those types of opportunities are some of the ways by which we're trying to offer opportunities, that will essentially lower the cert price that the library happens to be having to pay out at the end of the day for that borrow. So keep your eye out for more of those opportunities. There are definitely more coming out. And there's definitely more publishers always coming on board. And so, of course, with regard to that, rates are always kind of fluctuating to help overcome those budget costs that are happening at not only the federal level, but even more so the state level. We're always paying attention to what's happening at the state level too, because so much of that library budget's coming in from the state level at the end of the day.
Good point. And I guess I should use this time right here to remind everyone, hey, look, all of your public libraries are having it rough out there. Support your public library and advocate for them as well. Like we said, a lot of going on for them. So help them out where you can. And I guess, Kat, I want to, on the topic of working with publishers, safe to say a lot of aspiring comic creators, indie publishers, etc., like listen to the show and, would maybe be interested in having some of their comic work and stuff on Hoopla. I guess, how often are you guys working for like indie and small publishers to get their work to just, available on Hoopla?
Yeah, a lot of times right now, when it comes to indie authors and creators, we're getting their content through various aggregators, meaning it'll be like one company that happens to represent multiple individuals or imprints at the end of the day that aren't really at the tier where they are out on their own, able to do all those deliveries and things of that nature. They just don't have the bandwidth, right? And so that's what we lean into to get a lot of indie content at the end of the day, are those aggregators. And if you're an indie author that's wondering who the aggregators are that we have active relationships with, feel free to just shoot over an email to our general inbox at Hoopla. We'll be able to share with you who some of those relationships are in an effort for you to be able to find access to getting on the platform with us.
That's great. That's awesome. I guess in close, I mean, Catherine, you have given me a plethora of information. Like, look, unfortunately, my library was also one of the ones to cut the rentals from 16. I had a good 16 a month to 8. I know I was eating way too good. So it's an interesting time. Like I said, support and advocate for your public libraries. So I'm stupid excited to be, and it's a new month too. So all of my rentals have been renewed, which means I'm gonna play a smarter game. But I guess, Catherine, is there anything that you could say or talk about in terms of the future of Hoopla? What features you guys have coming up next? What people should pay attention to going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, definitely more binge passes coming out. And the other exciting thing about those binge passes is it's going to allow us to carry different formats than what you see organically on the platform today. So while you see audiobooks and ebooks and comics, one of the things that binge passes allowed us is to bring in puzzling type games.
Wow.
So we've got Puzzle Palace and Puzzmo. Those are two puzzle games, both word puzzles, as well as numeric type puzzles. They've got a game in Puzzmo called Really Bad Chess, and a few other types of games that aren't necessarily word or number type games. So a little bit more on the gaming side potentially. And then also magazines. So magazines we don't have organically on the platform, but we do through our binge passes. And we've also got some kids podcasts that are available through binge passes too. So I would say expect more in the podcasting space, hopefully more in the gaming space. So that's one of the exciting things in my mind is we're trying to expand that universe when we talk about that universe of formats, format opportunities again. There's even more, I think, coming our way soon that's going to get us excited and keep us going about other franchises or other universes that we're excited about from a creative perspective.
I am looking forward to that. I mean, look, comics, audiobooks, and now podcast. What can't Hoopla do?
I know, right?
All right, Catherine, this has been great. And I want to say to the patrons, ladies and gents, this is the Shortbox Podcast. And we just finished talking to Catherine Zappa about her role at Hoopla and the many different comics and graphic novels and all the things that you can check out for free. Thanks in part to your local library. Hoopla is available everywhere. I tried to look for a place that they're not available. They're on the Android store, the App Store, Google Play, Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, all that good stuff. Download Hoopla. It's free with your. It's free if you got a public library card. For more information about Hoopla and how to sign up, hey, check out one of the many helpful links in this episode show notes. Catherine, any parting words or shameless plugs before we wrap up? You've been great, by the way. Thank you.
Butter, well, I want to thank you so much for having me today. This was so awesome to get to talk about content because I'm so passionate about it, and content specifically on Hoopla. I love it. And most importantly, I really appreciate your shout outs to the libraries and supporting your libraries.
Absolutely.
It's absolutely like everybody's action item. We want to keep libraries around. We want to keep them growing. They service the community in a way that nobody else quite can. Going back to what you had mentioned earlier, I was a latchkey kid too, so libraries were my safe place. I got to learn a lot at a library, right? Because you got access to everything that was there physically. So keep up supporting those local libraries, you guys. It's so important for our communities to have access to those libraries, both in person as well as digitally, because there's a lot that those brick and mortar library locations are offering as far as other services today, even outside of content. So support. Thanks so much.
Here we go. Amen. All right, listeners, stick around for the outro. You guys have been great. Love you. And I'll catch you next week. All right. Peace. All right. Let me hit